Hello everyone, welcome to biochemistry class. In today's video, we will talk about carbohydrates and its classification. So what are the characteristics of carbohydrates? So it says here, carbohydrates are simply the polyhydroxy aldehydes or polyhydroxy ketones. Remember in your organic chemistry, you learned about what it means by hydroxyl group. Remember, hydroxyl groups are compounds that contain OH, hydroxyl or hydroxy group. Poly means many. So carbohydrates are molecules that contain many hydroxyl groups. And if it is called polyhydroxyaldehydes, the functional group is based on aldehyde. Remember, an aldehyde, um, it's the general formula of aldehyde is R, C, double bond O, H. Okay, let me write down in a pen. So an aldehyde has a general formula of R, C, double bond O, then H. Remember the R, this this represents the rest of the molecule. So a carbohydrate, carbohydrates contain many alcohol or many hydroxyl group, and it's based on an aldehyde group. Or it can also be a ketone based on ketone. Remember, a ketone is has a general formula of R connected to a carbon, and this is doubly bonded to oxygen and another R group. So R, as I said, is stands for an alkyl group, or it can be it can be it can it can be said that it's the rest of molecule. So the difference between aldehyde and a ketone is the the carbonyl group in ketone is in between two R groups, while in aldehyde the carbonyl group is at the terminal. All right. Now, another thing is the general characteristics of carbohydrates is um, most carbohydrates the simplest sugar, they have this empirical formula CH2O, quantity N. However, not all carbohydrates have this general formula or empirical formula, because some contains nitrogen, phosphorus, or sulfur. Those are derivatives of carbohydrates, and these molecules have been considered to be the most abundant bioorganic molecules in on planet, because carbohydrates are produced by photosynthetic organisms. Okay, so being said that photosynthesis is a process whereby plants make food using carbon dioxide and water. So in plants, what are the uses of carbohydrates? So it says here, carbohydrates serves as structural elements in the form of cellulose. Cellulose is a polymeric, it's a polysaccharide. It's made up of glucose. We will see that in the coming slides. So a structural component, a structural element, cellulose can be found as um, in the cell wall of the plant cell. And in carbohydrates, in plants, carbohydrates also serve as energy for the plants in the form of starch. So starch is also a polysaccharide. Cellulose is polysaccharide. Both of them are made up of glucose, but they have different function. In the coming slide, I will also explain what is the main difference between the two. So, what are the functions of carbohydrates? So here, number one, it says it provides energy. So the food that we eat, the food that contains carbohydrates, the rice, pasta, bread, they contain starch or sugar or simple sugar. So when we eat those kind of food, when they are metabolized, when they get burned in the inside the cell, in the presence of uh, oxygen, they provide energy. Number two is provides a short-term energy reserve in the form of glycogen. So glycogen is also a polysaccharide. So what happens is the excess glucose after our meal is stored or converted into glycogen so that we will have a future um, energy reserve. Okay, so glycogen is stored in our muscle and in our liver. Moreover, number three, it says carbohydrates can supply carbons for the synthesis of other biochemical substances such as protein, lipids, and nucleic acids. So, carbohydrates, when they are broken down, can supply carbon atoms for making other substances such as protein, lipids, and nucleic acids. These nucleic acids, they include our DNAs and our RNAs. Okay, number four function is um, serves as a part of structural framework of DNA and RNA. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. So ribo comes from a sugar means ribose. It's a 5 carbon atom. While RNA is ribonucleic acid. So both of them contains a carbohydrates that is derived from that is a 5 carbon atom ribose. And number 5, carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are linked to lipids as structural components in the cell membrane. Okay, and then number 6, carbohydrates. Some carbohydrates are linked to proteins for cell-to-cell recognition and cell-to-molecule recognition process. So these molecules, they serve as receptor on the surface of the cell. Now, at this point, we will classify carbohydrates based on molecular size. So when we say based on molecular size, this this is about the the size or the mass of the molecule. Okay, monosaccharides, they are the um, lightest or the simplest, I should say, because mono means one. They contain single molecule. Okay? They contain a single polyhydroxy. I explained earlier what it means by polyhydroxy. It's a molecule that contains many hydroxyl group. Okay? Hydroxy. Remember, I told you earlier that hydroxy is a molecule that has an OH. Okay? This OH is different from the hydroxide because this is um, a neutral compound. Okay? It's a um, OH is an alcohol, whereas hydroxide, OH minus, is a base. So polyhydroxy, it's mainly alcohol. Okay? Polyhydroxyaldehyde. I explained earlier what is an aldehyde. So it's a molecule that contains both a monosaccharide. It's a molecule that contains both aldehyde as a functional group and alcohol. Okay? So a monosaccharide that contains polyhydroxy and with aldehyde as functional group is called aldose. Al from the word aldehyde, okay? And it may contain also ketone. So the other classification of monosaccharide could be polyhydroxyketone. So I also explained earlier in the previous slide what is a ketone. So a monosaccharide could be either polyhydroxyaldehyde or polyhydroxyaldose. So how do they differ? In the presence of functional group. Okay, aldose, it's based on aldehyde. Polyhydroxyketone is based on a ketone, or it's called ketose. So keto sugar or aldoses. So monosaccharides cannot be broken down into simpler units by hydrolysis reaction. So basically, hydrolysis is breaking of large molecules by means of water. So when we say monosaccharide, you cannot break that anymore by hydrolysis. Okay? There are many monosaccharides. They differ in the number of carbon atoms. Some monosaccharides have 3 carbon atoms. Some have up to 7 carbon atoms. Alright, so when we say 3 carbon atoms, we call them triose. 3 carbon atoms stands for triose. So let's write here 3 for triose. Tri means 3. A monosaccharide that contains 4 carbon atoms, we call that tetrose. A monosaccharide that contains 5 carbon atoms, you call that pentose. Okay? And a monosaccharide that contains 6, you call that hexose. And many of the biologically or biochemically important monosaccharides belong to this hexose. So, a 3 carbon atom, triose. Okay, a 4 carbon atom, tetrose. A 5 carbon atom, pentose. 6 carbon atom, hexose. Generally, they are water soluble. That's why the glucose, which is the main sugar, which is the um, main source of our energy of our cell, is soluble in our body. Okay, so glucose, as I said, it's the main sugar that is needed by our cell. It's an aldohexose. Aldohexose. So when we say aldo, it's based on aldehyde. Hexose, it contains 6 carbon atoms. While fructose is a ketohexose. Keto, it's derived from a ketone group. The functional group is a ketone, and it's also a hexose at the same time. Hexose means 6 carbon atoms. So fructose and glucose both contain 6 carbon atoms, but they differ in functional group. One is based on aldehyde, the other one, fructose, is based on a ketone. Okay, then ribose is a 5 carbon sugar. So it's an aldopentose. Aldo, again, this is based on aldehyde, an aldose, and a 5 carbon sugar. So we call it aldopentose. Another classification, this time it's called disaccharide because disaccharide means two sugar units or two monosaccharides that are covalently bonded to each other. So the two monosaccharides are connected to one another. They are still water soluble, okay? And disaccharides can now be broken down by hydrolysis. Unlike monosaccharide, as I said earlier, we cannot break that anymore by hydrolysis. But disaccharide, the bonds, that connect the two monosaccharides can be broken down into two by hydrolysis. Hydrolysis, as I said, is addition of water to break the bond. So, a disaccharide, when it is hydrolyzed, will produce two monosaccharides. A trisaccharide means three monosaccharides that are linked together. When a trisaccharide is hydrolyzed, it will produce three monosaccharides also. So there are common examples of disaccharides. Example, your table sugar, which is chemically known as sucrose. Sucrose contains glucose, and this is connected to fructose. Remember, I told you earlier, glucose is remember, aldose, and then fructose is a ketose. Okay, so this time the glucose and fructose are connected. Okay, lactose is another example. This is called milk sugar, but this time lactose is made up of glucose, and the other one is galactose. Glucose and galactose are both aldo hexoses. Both of them are aldo hexoses. So when sucrose is hydrolyzed, when we eat food containing sucrose in our small intestine, this bond is broken. How do you call the bond? The breaking of bond. The breaking of bond is called hydrolysis. So in the small intestine, when we eat food containing sucrose or table sugar, this bond is broken. Okay? So when we drink milk, lactose is present in milk. So in the small intestine, the glucose and the galactose separate. All right? Now the last classification, which is the next classification, which is the largest, the heaviest, since we are talking about based on molecular size, is the polysaccharide. Poly means many, saccharide means sugar units. So many sugar units that are connected, that are linked to one another. So they are called polymeric carbohydrates. Okay, many monosaccharides that are linked to one another. Some contains even hundreds to thousands monosaccharides unit that are linked together. Examples are starch, cellulose, glycogen, and chitin. So starch is the um, energy providing molecule produced by plants. So this provides energy. Cellulose, as I said earlier, this provides a structural framework in plants. And glycogen is the energy storage form. So we humans, including animals, um, they store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. So this is our energy reserve, as I said earlier. And chitin or chitin, this is the polysaccharide um, that serves as exoskeletons in some insects and um, exoskeleton of the crustaceans, including lobsters and shrimps. We will talk about this in the coming slides.